Good Thursday, and welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Faunt Leroy. It's so good to see all of you here on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you have not already, please make sure to do your due diligence and hit the like button, and as well as while you're there, go ahead and go to jaybefaunt.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. You have that there because sometimes the YouTube the notifications aren't as reliable, so it's best to get it straight from me, and that puts you on the mailing list as well. So thank you so very much, and like I said before, go ahead and give the stream a like. One of the things we're going to be talking about today, is we're going to be talking to a special guest. He's been on this channel before. As always, whenever I have a guest on, I want to say a blanket hello. I will say hello to all of you at the end, but to respect the guest time, I want to make sure I get to everything immediately so that we take better use of their time. So what are we talking about today? Well, of course, we have Matthew Hoh is returning. And I would like to introduce my guest. He is a political activist, a military veteran, and also former North Carolina Senate Green Party candidate. We have Matthew Hoh joining me right now. So there you go. Good to have you back.
Yes, thank you for having me back on. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I actually noticed, and I'm going to bring this tweet up because I thought it was very important. And I saw this, I was just like, wait a minute. This is, hang on. Let me share this with the audience because I think this is very important. For context, one of the things that you spoke about was how the North Carolina Democratic Party has essentially been interfering with your ballot access in North Carolina in your run for Senate, and you and the Green Party actually took them to court over it. And I would just like to share, and if you can give us the update about this. So it says the U.S. court has found that the North Carolina Democratic Party, DSCC, and Mark Elias attempted to keep my campaign in North Carolina GP off the ballot in 2022 to be frivolous and without foundation. If you can give us more of the bird's eye view of what happened.
Correct. And actually, I left the word out. They called it unreasonable as well. Yes. So frivolous, unreasonable, and without foundation. And they awarded us damages, which, from what I understand and what the court itself said, is quite rare to do. Typically, when you win your previous cases, you may not get damages, particularly in a political case like this. And so the court noted just how egregious the North Carolina Democratic Party's efforts were to keep us off the ballot. And they awarded us these damages. Now, go back. This was 2 years ago in 2022. We had to collect signatures to get on the ballot. We needed 13,865 signatures. We collected 22,500 signatures. We turned them in time, did everything we were supposed to do, followed the rules, and we were denied verification. The State Board of Elections claimed that they were concerned with fraud on our behalfs. And of course, that's completely untrue. We didn't commit fraud. But what they said when it was time to validate us as a state party, they said, because we suspect there's fraud, we cannot go ahead with certifying you as a political party. Very similar to the argument that Trump and his people were using after the 2020 elections, that we think something is wrong. We're not going to show you any evidence. We're not going to allow for any due process. But because we suspect something is wrong, we're going to try and prevent this from going forward. And that's essentially what they did to us. So we sued. We went to federal court. When we sued the North Carolina State Board of Elections. The Democratic Party entered into that suit. They intervened. They jumped onto it. and it wasn't the North Carolina Democratic Party, but it was a Democratic Senate, the DSCC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. So Chuck Schumer's group, represented by Mark Elias and his law firm, which, as people know, Mark Elias is the Democratic Party's super lawyer. We went to U.S. District Court. We won in U.S. District Court. The Democratic Party appealed. We went to Federal Appeals Court. We won in Federal Appeals Court. And then now, almost 2 years later, we won damages in U.S. District Court against the Democratic Party. Hopefully, this will be able to be used as a precedent across the nation, right? Where now you have this established case where not just how we were lied about, we were bullied, we were everything was done by both the state and the Democratic Party to keep us off the ballot, but also you have this clear judicial decision citing these types of actions, and then providing this precedent for damages to be awarded.
Just a question, as far as the meddling, has there ever been any word from Josh Stein, who is the Attorney General of North Carolina, regarding this? Has he, condemned the Democratic Party for what they have done, or, offered any type of cooperation or support for you guys into clarifying this issue?
No, of course not. Of course not. And Josh Stein, of course, is running as the candidate for governor for the Democratic Party here in North Carolina this year. No, of course not. And we had evidence that there was interactions between the governor's office, so Roy Cooper, this Mark Elias's law firm, and the state board of elections. So something else that was very illegal. We were never able to move forward with that. There was just no ability for us to find an avenue within North Carolina to present this very clear abuse of power, abuse of office by the governor's office, right? And a very political maneuver to keep a competitor off the ballot. There was nowhere for us to go with this. It's similar too, because it wasn't just their accusations of fraud, which itself was fraudulent. They committed a mass degree of fraud in accusing us of fraud. One of the things they also did, they did a bunch of different things to try and keep us off the ballot, was that they called people and they sent people to the people whose homes who signed our petitions. So what they did was they called folks, or they actually showed up at their doorstep, and they said, we are from the Green Party. They also said they were from the Secretary of State's office and the state board of elections. So they were masquerading as state officials. We have video of this. We have audio of this. We have written testimony, affidavits, essentially, people attesting to this is what happened. This person came to my door and said they were from the state of North Carolina and asked me to take my name off of the petition I signed for the Green Party. And similar, we presented that. It never went anywhere. The only response we got from the State Board of Elections was that, well, this sounds like it is canvassing to us, right? So the issue was that you had within the State Board of Elections, direct political appointees running the State Board of Elections whose allegiance is to the governor's office. So any degree of objectivity, any degree of neutrality, anything that is you would expect or hope for, in which we all know is the case, it's not going to be the case. So I don't want people to think I was naive thinking it was ever going to be any way other than this. And we are prepared for it to a degree, but we were so, I think, taken back by the brazenness of this, right? By just how overt the clear and just how clearly they were acting in order to keep us off the ballot. And, we shouldn't be surprised that the major media here in North Carolina went along with what they were saying. So that was another thing that we had, is we had a lot of great support from folks like yourself, from people across, YouTube and podcasts, on social media. But when it came to traditional media, what we were up against was just the headlines from the local television. The News and Observer and the Charlotte Observer, they actually are pretty decent in terms of their coverage. But for the most part, the rest of the state went along with whatever the State Board of Elections or the Democratic Party said as the truth. And so what we were up against for months in our campaign were these accusations of fraud, and so we would get interviewed by local media. It would be, when did you stop committing fraud? right? I mean, like, so there was never any intent. So even though you had this media attention, it was incredible negative. And then once we won in court, both at U.S. District Court level and federal appeals court, the coverage completely dropped off, right? Which again is something I think we would all expect. But to have that occur, to have that visceral experience, you know, how brazen it is, how overt it is, how they're not even trying to hide this, what they're doing here, I think that really causes you to take a step back and say, my God, this is, you know, this is as rigged and as corrupt as they say. However, to experience it is, you know, you're on a different level.
You know, and one of the things to kind of add to your point regarding the media, this should have been national news, in my opinion, because when you look at this is literally election meddling.
Yep.
Forget what they suspected Russia of doing. What's going on is essentially election meddling of a major political party in the election process. I mean, you know, this should have been picked up by MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post. It should have been picked up by so many, and it should have been a huge issue. And let me ask you this: have you ever been invited on by Fox News or any of more of the right-wing outlets? Because I know they typically go against the Democratic Party whenever they can. I mean, this is literally cannon fodder. I mean, not cannon fodder. This is literally a ram in the bush for them. I mean, for the Democratic Party to go against you, and they could have just uplifted your story. Did they ever have you on?
So we did have some exposure that way, but not on Fox, not on Newsmax or One American News Network or any of those, or certainly not the major GOP backed news radio. Locally in North Carolina, you have the Carolina Journal, which is a conservative platform. They were very supportive, and it was clear why they were supportive, and actually did some of the best reporting on this, some of the best investigative reporting. And then we also had some support from conservative podcasters, YouTubers, Twitter folks. Tim Pool, I believe, was one of them. You know, went on his show. You know, spoke or was published in his platform. But I mean, we did have some national attention, and to a degree it was helpful. So NPR ran 6 stories on this. The AP ran about the same number. However, the meat of the stories, the substance of the stories was very much biased against us. And when we won, when we clearly won, and, you know, the judgment against the Democratic Party and the State Board of Elections in the U.S. District Court was eviscerating. I mean, the judge was extremely angry and upset at what he had seen. And then in return, the decision by the Federal Appeals Court not to even entertain the motion by the North Carolina, by the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee to take us off the ballot was incredibly short. It was like 2 sentences long. That showed you like their disregard for the arguments put forward by the Democratic Party here. None of that was brought up in these stories. So what it was just the continued drama of the accusations. And very, very seldomly we were quoted, very seldomly we were given our due. Meanwhile, the spokesperson for the North Carolina State Board of Elections would say over and over again over a period of months, both locally and nationally, again, these NPR stories or these AP stories, that there is a universe of fraud. We are investigating thousands upon thousands of fraudulent signatures. We have opened a criminal investigation. So that's something we dealt with in July of 2022, was the newspapers, the local media, including, I believe, the AP, publishing that we were under criminal investigation for committing fraud. And of course, not anything close. There was never a criminal investigation. We never submitted thousands upon thousands of fraudulent signatures, forgeries. I mean, so you had like that type of accusation being hammered on us over and over and over again, so that the exposure we did get, while there would be a certain constituency, of course, with nationally that would recognize what was happening because they were aware of how the Democratic Party interferes. They are aware of how ballot access is structured across the country to deny independents and third parties the opportunity to be on the ballot, to deny voters' choice, essentially. But that constituency among the national audience here was limited. And so I think most of the time the assumption was, well, here they are. These people are up to no good, these independent third party folks. And of course, if you are watching CNN and MSNBC, then the assumption is, it's not said, but it's implied, that the Green Party is working for Donald Trump and his people. I mean, this goes back to the whole Jill Stein threw the election for Donald Trump in 2016, all that nonsense, right? So it's not stated, but it's implied, and that all rolls together. And then, of course, when we win, like I said, so a lot of coverage in particularly July and August of 2022. At the end of August 2022, when we win in federal appeals court, there is almost nothing said about this. The AP report was maybe a paragraph or 2 paragraphs long, if I remember correctly. I don't think NPR, even though they have written and posted so much about this, followed up at all. Same thing too, even locally on the local NPR stations here, while it was going on, and while I spent spend a whole hour with local reporters on the public radio stations, say in Charlotte or in Chapel Hill here, your whole hour you're spent defending yourselves from these, gross violations, these gross accusations of violating, right, of committing fraud. And then when you're cleared of that, there's no invitation to come back on and speak about your platform. And just to give you an example of this, where this goes to and why this all is, once you get into that cycle, when you're really in the campaign. I had a local television reporter here say this to me about 2 weeks before the election. And I had spoken to him a number of times over the summer as this court case was going on, as we were, being hit with all these accusations. And once we were cleared, and then it became September and October and the campaign's in full swing, they never spoke to us again. And this one guy did speak to me again right before the election, and he apologized. And he said, I'm sorry, we spoke to you all this time over the summer, and then, last couple of months, we haven't even talked to you at all. I apologize. But, the reality is you're not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on my network. Why are we going to have you on? That, right? And so that type of again, the brazenness, the openness of it, I think he was exasperated. He was embarrassed by it. I think he wanted to vent, but you saw that too. That's how the system is rigged in so many ways, not just with the money, but with how the media reports on things. And then, of course, the media not wanting to do anything to jeopardize their relationship with the two major parties, very careful of walking that very fine line of access journalism, right? Not wanting to be the ones who aren't invited to be on Senator Ted Budd, he was the Republican candidate, be on Ted Budd's bus as he drives across the state or whatever. So, you get excluded. And it's a frustrating, difficult experience. But if you take it the view of, okay, we seceded, we won, we persevered, we won, and now we have ballot access here in the state. And more importantly, we have set this precedent, and there's legal precedent in U.S. courts for this type of victory, on top of previous victories regarding ballot access that have been adjudicated in the courts. Oftentimes, we were very fortunate that we were able to have this adjudicated while there were still times. Very often in these ballot access cases, and this is one of the strategies that both the Democrats and Republicans use, they stretch things out, right? They delay it. They're exhausting you. They're causing you to focus all on this legal aspect, right? Which is exhausting your resources. It's causing an enormous amount of stress within your campaign, and you're not campaigning. But the other thing, too, is can we stretch this out so that they miss the deadline and we have to print the ballots without them? That was overall the strategy that the Democratic Party was going for with us. And so many times, though, they're successful. And so you'll see in various ballot access victories for third parties and independents, oftentimes it comes too late. Oftentimes it comes a year or two after the election. So you're vindicated and you have that precedent now. But in terms of actually having been on a ballot, you were denied and they were successful to a degree. Hopefully that precedent is there. And again, like I said, we have ballot access now. So the Green Party does not have to do anything this year to try and get Jill Stein onto the ballot here. She's, automatically on. And hey, I mean, if it wasn't that case, there would, as of now, not be an anti-genocide candidate on the ballot here in North Carolina.
Wow. And just as a question, because I mean, really what they were committing against you was a political war of attrition just to make sure that you do not get on the ballot and to X out any potential Green Party people, no matter what level of government that they may be running in on the ballot. But because of this victory, is there any chance that you may be running again, or is that ship sailed?
Right now, that ship sailed. I've got enough going on. When I went to run, I said this is the one time I'm doing it, and I was much more dramatic than I thought it was going to be. But certainly was worthwhile, though, in that sense that we won these victories, right? Including this most recent decision, last month, or I guess 2 months ago now, that clearly laid out that there was a deliberate, well-structured, well-financed attempt by the Democratic Party to keep us off the ballot in the most undemocratic manner possible. So that is something that I think should be utilized by as many people around the country as we fight against this duopoly in matters of genocide, in terms of war on Wall Street. It's a uniparty, basically. We're seeing these assaults on both the First and the Fourth Amendment by both parties. As well as just the material conditions, the living conditions, the quality of life for hundreds of millions of Americans, right? So all these things that do make it a uniparty, this is just one more thing that we can present to people as the reason why we have to abandon this structure. We have to build something new, and we have to take back our political system, because it's only going to get worse, because that's the way it works, right? This inertia builds in one way, and it's building in the way against us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for, giving us the update about that, because I think it's important that we celebrate these victories whenever we have them, because what they did against you and your campaign, and really overarchingly what they're doing against third parties, is anti-democratic. It is, and I know some people who may be conservative use phrases like this. Well, I'm going to say it's anti-American for them to do things like that, because if they really truly stand for democracy, then they would not be a barrier to people who are trying to run in order to try to make the country better. So I just want to thank you for that.
And this is not, I think your point there about calling it anti-American is appropriate, right? Regardless of the history of this country and everything we know about how we got to this point. But in a sense of how broad it is, because here in North Carolina, even though we had our victory, North Carolina has still put up roadblocks, still put up obstacles, still trying to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot, the Constitution Party off the ballot, Cornel West. They haven't submitted their signatures as far as I know, but I'm sure they will face problems. But certainly with RFK Jr.'s campaign, they came in, they spent a ton of money. They got their signatures rather quickly. They submitted, and the State Board of Elections ignored and delayed them for 6 months until the RFK Jr. campaign brought in the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court as their lead attorney with the State Board of Elections. So they brought in the heaviest weighted conservative they could find in North Carolina. They were able to pay for him, right? And that's the difference too. The RFK Jr. campaign has got tens and tens of millions of dollars behind it, but if you're a grassroots campaign, focused on, say, working families, you're not going to have that type of money behind them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with, say, the Cornel West campaign here, whether they'll try and do the same thing. Because one, what we're up against, everything I just said, everything we've been talking about the last 25 minutes, it doesn't change that those who are in power, it doesn't change their entitlement, it doesn't change their arrogance, and it doesn't change the confidence they have because of all the money behind them. And that's something we have to keep in mind, who we're up against and how this is a continuous fight, a continuous battle that, you know, we ever can't rest upon. They'll never rest. We can never rest. You know, so we'll see what happens. I know even on the right, though, the Constitution Party, which is a party that you and I probably, I don't know if we agree with anything they say, you know, but, you know, they should be on the ballot. And in North Carolina, State Board of Elections has been causing issues with them in terms of getting them certified. Hopefully they'll get through it. But yeah, I mean, this is something that is broad. It applies to everyone, not just, you know, leftist, grassroots, independent or third party candidates or parties.
Of course. Yeah. And so, I mean, with that, I mean, you see a lot. There's a lot going on right now in the country, especially, I mean, the Democratic Party really is not making themselves look any better right now, not just with what they did to the Green Party in your campaign, but also what's going on nationally and internationally right now that's going on with the genocide that's currently going on in Gaza. And now we've seen a really huge plethora of different groups, student groups that have taken over college campuses all over the country in their response to the genocide that's going on in Gaza, pushing their schools to divest from Israel. It started off with Columbia. Now you have USC, Emory University, University of Florida is now getting into it. University of South Florida is now getting into it now. I'm hearing underpinnings that here in Florida, as well as many others. And so I just want to, for the audience to see some of what has happened at Columbia over the last, 24 hours or so. This is actually out of Middle East Eye. So hopefully you guys can see this. It's a little bit small, but let's get into this. This is really short.
I've covered lots of this sort of stuff around the world, and I've never seen this many police moving into one area.
Okay, let's talk about the shot now. Hey, Miguel, the shot we're seeing now, where's this control room? Where's this?
This is 114th Street, east of Broadway. So they are as close to campus as you can get, and police clearly getting ready to go in.
So as we can see, as of right now, there's a ton of police that have went in as of the last 24 hours to clear out the students who are protesting, and they are occupying the courtyard. They also took over and occupied a building, I think it's called the Hamilton Hall. There's also actually body cam footage that recently just came out within the last 24 hours about the police coming in and also going through Hamilton Hall. I'm not going to show too much of it, but the most really that has happened was around, let's go right here. So they actually police actually broke the barricades and made their way in to confront the students. So I'm not going to show the entire thing because of YouTube guidelines, but one of the reasons why I wanted to share that was because there was some recent remarks by President Joe Biden. And before I get into that, just wanted to get your opinion about the protests that are going on around the country by students within these colleges in regards to their protest against the genocide in Gaza.
Right. I think there's more than 100 nationwide, and there's dozens that have popped up overseas as well. And, you know, you scratch your head at this and you say, you know what, if they had just left these kids alone, if they had paid them no attention, you know, you and I wouldn't be talking about this like this. The whole world wouldn't be talking about this. The American empire wouldn't be exposed for the fragile creature that it actually is, because that's the nature behind all of this. Yeah, the elites, the system, it's really upset that people are offending their entitlement, right? They're really upset at the nature of their lies being called out so brazenly and so clearly. But however, the strongest thing I think that motivates these brutal police state crackdowns, essentially, and we just saw it happen in UCLA last night. More than 100 students arrested, getting shot with rubber bullets, and is the fear, right? And so when all you have are lies, when everything you are doing, your policies, when your actions, when everything about who you are as a leader, as the ruling elite, as the system is based upon lies, when that's what the foundation is, you can only reply with violence. And so they're scared to death that these protests were going to spread. They're scared to death that these protests are going to communicate, they're going to inform, they're going to provide opportunities for other people to mobilize and organize, and they know that's dangerous to them. So I think that's why you've seen such a rush to crack down, is the fear, right? There's also, too, the way the whole thing has been structured now. You see these university administrators scared to death that the big money donors are going to pull their money. And so, right. And then the politicians, of course, you see if Benjamin Netanyahu makes a statement, immediately you have, not just second and third tier members of Congress parroting what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, but you have the senior members of our government, Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, Speaker Johnson, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, whoever, saluting and following what Netanyahu is saying. I mean, so you see on so many levels how corrupt our empire is, but also, too, you see in that as well the very fragile nature, how it is built upon a foundation of lies, and that it has to then react violently like it's been doing, because it can't argue otherwise. It can't discuss, it can't debate, it can't confront. All it can do is react violently.
Yeah, of course. I want to get your thoughts on what President Biden actually just said recently. Just a shout out to Let This Radicalize You on Twitter. And Joe Biden's actually given his remarks regarding the student protesters all over the country. Let's just take a look.
So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education. Look, it's basically a matter of fairness. It's a matter of what's right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos. So let me be.
Your thoughts on what Joe Biden said?
Well, I want to amend what I said about how you can only react with violence, because they'll also react with lies. They'll just stack more lies on top of their lies. So this idea that somehow these are violent protests, I mean, there's no violence occurring. Violence is coming from the police forces. That's it. And the counter protesters. That's it. There's no violence coming out of these encampments. These are college students and their faculty, along with supporters, peacefully protesting. I mean, the idea that somehow this crackdown was needed to restore order is just another lie on top of all the other lies. But what do we expect? These are the same people. Joe Biden's the same people who claims it's not genocide but self-defense what Israel's doing to the Palestinian people. And then I heard this morning, one commentator on Al Jazeera, he cited Martin Luther King in his 1963 letter from a Birmingham jail. And as King said, the greatest obstacle is the white moderate who values order over justice. And that's essentially what we see with Joe Biden right there, as well as I think most white moderates. So most of the Democratic Party, or not most, but a good portion of that Democratic Party that agrees that order is more important than justice.
Yeah, and that was something that we were constantly warned against. In fact, one of the things that was talked about, I showed this video a few weeks ago, was that civil rights activist James Farmer said that when it comes to Black liberation, is talking about we want white people who are willing to go all the way with us. And the thing is, it's like, are we willing to go all the way with the people who are marginalized, with the people who are the most disenfranchised? Right now, it's people in places like, Gaza, and really just the entire whole of Palestine, Gaza, West Bank, Rafah. They're some of the most disenfranchised. The people in Haiti are some of the most disenfranchised. The people in Congo. So are we really able to go all the way with them, and have that solidarity? Nick, my comment from RBN says, he said, keep your unity. I want solidarity. And so are we willing to go all the way? And from what it looks like, you will have people like Joe Biden, the Progressive Caucus, they will say how they want a ceasefire, but then they will endorse people like President Joe Biden. I honestly think that it was a huge misstep, and I'm probably understating, but it's a huge misstep to allow Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to come to your event while you're occupying Columbia University, and then start taking photos with her and being friendly with her. In fact, she should have not been allowed near that camp, because honestly, like, once you have people like her that come in, it's the end. It's over. And then there was I would say preemptive victory dance by Brown University students, who basically celebrated, because then they said, oh, we're going to have a vote in October over our divestment of Israel. A vote? No, it's like, no. Why do we have to vote on this?
It is. I mean, you run into that wall, and with AOC, you make a very good point. What has she done besides the photo ops? She had to be hounded into saying the words genocide. I mean, and thankfully those activists forced her to do so. That went viral, those activists outside of the movie theater chasing her down the street. And then about 5 days or a week later, she finally said the words genocide, even as she protested that she'd been saying them all along, when she hadn't been. So that's what you have there. You have someone who she is more concerned with her own political future than actually fulfilling the principles and values to which she supposedly believes and which she attests to. And so when she shows up at Columbia, like you said, or City University, City University of New York, you have to be very suspect of what is she actually going to do. I had this conversation last night with a guy who's a libertarian, and we were both saying, while we don't like Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, the fact that he was willing to hold up all those promotions for all those generals and admirals last year and cause like just a complete ruckus, right? Cause all kinds of hysteria and drama over it. Not for anything that I support him doing it, but I respect that he did it. He was willing to use his office. He was willing to use his power to cause extreme discomfort for the system to try and get something for his constituency. Now, AOC doesn't have the power. House rep doesn't have the power of a senator, of course, but there are certain things they could do. Or even just to, if we remember AOC's first day in office, when she takes part in that sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office, but by the end of that 2-year cycle, she's calling Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear, right? I mean, and so how do you hold someone like that accountable then, right? And I think one of the ways is to do it the way you suggested. They should have turned her away. They should have said, you know what? Why don't you go get a photo with Mama Bear? because you've not done what you could do for us. But now here you are in this moment.
Well, actually, to add to your point, she could have went the way of Matt Gaetz when he and the Freedom Caucus actually withheld their vote for speaker. Right. And then when they actually got a victory over being able to oust Kevin McCarthy and then put in Mike Johnson. Well, right. Mike Johnson is really just a Kevin McCarthy in Freedom Caucus face, if I could, borrow the phrase. But that's basically what he is now. I mean, he's just as much as a Zionist. And so now they're saying they did all that work, and now Mike Johnson is doing basically the same thing. But you can applaud the chutzpah of somebody like Kevin McCarthy for actually making him go 15 rounds and say, no, we're not going to allow you to be speaker unless you concede to these different things.
Right.
Now, a lot of us, we were talking about forced to vote when it comes to Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage and what have you. But you also could have did it for a ceasefire, right? You could have did something like that, and it's just,
and that's the importance of independent and third party politics right now. Yes. I mean, the idea, of course, is that we're going to build a multi-party democracy, right? We're going to have a more proportional system. We'll have an electoral system that's not this absurd two-party thing we have. But, in the meantime, what we have, though, when we run third party and independent candidates is we have that ability to take power away from other people, to be spoilers, if you will. And I don't like the word spoiler, to use the word disruptor, disrupt the system, disrupt their nice setup that they had. They've got a good racket going on, right? And if you can disrupt that, that's going to cause problems. And that's when you can start to extract concessions. And if I remember correctly, the main concession in 2020 that Forced the Vote was trying to get in exchange for Pelosi's speakership was a vote on Medicare for all. Something that the squad, that these progressive, that these so-called socialists were campaigning upon and were promoting at that point as their major platform policy, right? Yeah. And since then, that platform policy has basically dropped off. You don't hear them speak about Medicare for all at all, right? I mean, so you've actually seen the reverse happen, where rather than using what power they could have, they've had their power taken away from them. They've been pummeled and they've been beaten down to the point where these people won't even say the words Medicare for all. They won't say the words living wage, right? I mean, so when was the last time you heard any of them say those things? So we've seen actually within the Democratic Party the ability to not just allow for more democratic nature, small d democratic nature within the party, but a crackdown, a real effective manner of controlling the party. That, if you are a student of these things, I guess it's admirable to look at because they've been effective in controlling their own party, but that comes to the great expense of the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I also wanted to share was this particular video as well, because people like Joe Biden want to say, well, this is violent. You guys can't be doing this. There's this proper channels you have to go through. I want to share this because I think this is really important. So this is actual video of them taking over Hamilton Hall. Mm-hmm. And they renamed it to Hins Hall. Right. And let's go into this.
Palestinian child murdered in Gaza by the Israeli occupation forces funded
The students feel like they need to escalate their form of protest right now because what we're seeing on the ground in Gaza is the threat of a ground invasion. We have to protest. We have to shut things down because they refuse to listen to us. This is how we make sure that the politicians, no matter where they go, are going to be faced with the reality of what's happening in Gaza and faced with the political consequences.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
They are willing to risk arrest in order to stand firmly with the people of Gaza, and that's exactly what we're seeing them do. No amount of repression is going to break the student movement.
I think this is important because it says Colombian students have occupied Hamilton Hall many times before, including during 1968 and 1972 protests against the Vietnam War. In 1985, students held the building for 3 weeks, demanding the school divest from apartheid South Africa. It says the school board divested later that year.
This is your fight too. It's our tax dollars that are being invested in the arms that are going to the state of Israel, in the arms that are murdering innocent Palestinian people right now. These tax dollars are dollars that could be used for public housing, for education, for healthcare. And instead, our government is more invested in war than our own people.
So that was basically the video. I mean, really, it was in honor of a 6-year-old Palestinian girl that was murdered by the IDF.
Right, and that story, of all the heartbreaking stories, stories of horror we've seen, 1,000 upon 1,000. You know, every day, we see videos that we never want to see, we never wanted to see, and then we see them again the next day. Right, this has just been we're witnessing a genocide, you know, on our screens. And Hind's story stood out because they had her on the phone. They had this audio recording of this little girl calling for help as her family lay dead in the car around her. And then, of course, the Israelis say you can send an ambulance in, and the Israelis shot and killed the ambulance drivers, the 2 paramedics who went to go save the little girl. And then about a week and a half after this all occurs, they find her body, you know, and just one of at least 35,000 such stories. And it is, to the point in that video, to the point that's being made for 7 months now, the points of being made for decades. Essentially, this is not possible without the United States support for Israel. Israel could not be conducting this without all the massive amounts of aid and assistance the U.S. provides in all forms, not just military, but in intelligence, in financial assistance. Most people don't know that Israel, the United States, guarantees all loans issued by Israel. So if Israel issues any debt, the United States backs that. You know, I mean, so we're co-signing everything Israel does. I mean, and of course, there's all the diplomatic support, and then of course the political support. Most recently, the political support being not just this quashing of the First Amendment on our college campuses, you know, these attacks on these students and their faculty because they're standing up against genocide, calling out their universities for investing billions upon billions of dollars in the Israeli genocidal machine. But you also have this week, as rumors of the International Criminal Court possibly indicting Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders, you see the American Congress reacting immediately. So again, as Benjamin Netanyahu speaks out against possibly being indicted by the International Criminal Court, what do you have? You have members of Congress almost immediately start talking about sanctioning the International Criminal Court, right? Start taking action against the ICC to prevent it, I mean, so that type of political cover, and then of course the diplomatic cover that we've seen by the United States protecting Israel, not just this past year in the UN, but for decades in the United Nations. So, I mean, the arguments that are being made on these campuses are very well entrenched in the terms of what's actually occurring over there, why it's able to occur, and why it's being allowed to occur. And, you know, just as that video, James, it says that video alludes to, these students too will be judged correctly and justly by history, just as the civil rights, just as the Vietnam, just as the environmental movement, just as for South Africa, you know, so forth, the Iraq War, all those things. These students will be judged by history to be correct.
Yeah. One of the things, somebody who will not be judged correctly by history is a professor, Rebecca Weiner from Columbia University. This was actually broken. This story broke by the Gray Zone, Wyatt Reed and Max Blumenthal, that actually broke earlier today. It says Columbia crackdown led by university professor doubling as NYPD spook. So just to give you guys just a little overview, it says Rebecca Weiner is a Columbia University professor who also serves as intelligence director of the NYPD. Mayor Eric Adams credits her with spying on anti-genocide student protesters and directing a militarized raid that dislodged them from campus. So who was behind that raid was actually a professor. She was behind the raid.
Well, let's not forget, too, that Hillary Clinton is a professor at Columbia University, as well as Victoria Nuland, the recent number 2 at the State Department, who has been the most fervent in both Republican and Democratic administrations in terms of leading for a new Cold War, and essentially a hot war with Russia. As well as Victoria Nuland, of course, was very instrumental in Dick Cheney's office in making sure the Iraq War happened in 2002 and 2003. So those are 2 of the more prominent professors who were at Columbia. So that, yeah, Columbia, as well as most of our academia's ties to the military-industrial complex. You know, my friend Ray McGovern, he doesn't say military-industrial complex anymore, MIC. He says Mickey Matt, which is MICIMATT. Let me see if I can get it right. Military, Industrial, Congressional, Intelligence, Media, Academic, Think Tank Complex, wow. Excuse me, right? And I would add in the banks as well, and the fossil fuel corporations and all those. But you see that type of the hundreds of millions of dollars, the billions of dollars that go into our university system, both from our government, whether it's from the Pentagon, whether it's from the intelligence community, whether it's from the State Department, or from the weapons companies themselves. You know, these universities are receiving millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from the military-industrial complex, as well as then from big conservative right-wing donors, as well as from big liberal donors as well, who are threatening to pull their money back. And what we see happen this week in Congress, you saw an effort. It passed. And so the House is going to have 6 different committees. I think I got that number right. 6 different committees begin to investigate universities on charges of anti-Semitism. And of course, what they want to do is they want to appoint special monitors for these universities and colleges to ensure that if colleges and universities are not adhering to our Congress's standard on speech, then no federal money will be going to those universities and colleges, right? I mean, so what we're seeing here is just not just on this issue, on a holistic level. This is incredibly dangerous, and there's no surprise that what you had happen in the last week or so in terms of assaulting our First Amendment, including the ban on TikTok. You've also seen assaults on the Fourth Amendment, because you assault the First Amendment, you are naturally going to do that in the Fourth as well, right? So First Amendment is public speech. Fourth Amendment is essentially private speech. So what you saw in the last week, just as they're banning TikTok, just as they're assaulting the First Amendment, the Congress is authorizing warrantless spying on the American people through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, right? I mean, and so expanding it giving the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, local law enforcement, because it's all fused together. And that I think that right there is a great example of that with that professor, of that intersection, right? Of Mickey Mac, of how you have this intersection of the intelligence community, academia, and then local law enforcement, right? And this is what we're up against.
Yeah. And one of the reasons, this is her reasoning, right? Because she said, let me go here just to make sure. One of the things about this lady, she says that the problem isn't necessarily, she said, militarized raid was a response to a student rhetoric associated with terrorism, right? And she said that according to Wiener, the police response was not necessitated by any criminal behavior, but by radical language and symbols of the students. So hang on. If she says the police response was not necessitated by any criminal behavior, that means that a crime was not committed.
Right.
Essentially, right?
Essentially, it's the danger. It's rhetoric. That's what's dangerous. It goes back to, why are these crackdowns happening? Again, it's just not just the fact that their entitlement has been offended, their arrogance, but it is the fear that they have, because this is why speech is the First Amendment. This is why the founding fathers, characterized it as the paramount liberty. I mean, and speech is important, not just because it allows us to have a free expression of our ideas and our opinions and everything, but because it can inform, because it can mobilize, because it can educate, because it can organize. And that's why they are scared to death of it. And the other aspect, I think, as we pull back and we look at this crackdown and how this is such a great case study for the American empire, is look at how our corporate media is reacting to this. First of all, media, you've had journalists across the country get beaten up by the police at these encampments. You've had journalists get arrested. You've had journalists get maced and pepper sprayed by the police at these encampments. And what do you see? You see the corporate media not standing up for them. No surprise. But what do you see? Why is the corporate media cheerleading for this police crackdown? Why are they cheerleading for this assault on the First Amendment? Well, some of it's because they are part of the power elite. They are part of the elite of the empire. And with that means that they are so threatened by not being able to control the narrative. And that's what they see these encampments as, a threat to their ability to control the narrative. This is basically a mass personification of what you are doing, James, right? What other people are doing with this type of technology we have, with the ability to inform people, with the ability to educate people, ability to inspire people, right? To organize them. They are scared to death. One, the media is scared to death because it's cutting into their market share, essentially. But also, two, it's exposing their lies. It's exposing that they are as corrupt and as rotten as the rest of the empire is. Right. And that they're faced with it. So this is how they're reacting. So this is why, if you turn on CNN, if you turn on MSNBC, if you turn on Fox, what you hear are just things that are completely untrue. Just like Joe Biden's speech that you played a little while ago, where he's going on about violence on campus and how people are unsafe and everything else. That's what the major media, the corporate media, is saying over and over again. They're hyping this up as something it's not. And it's because, one, they want to be good members of the empire. But the other part of it, too, is that they see these camps, these students, and the personification as the very real threat to the danger, very real danger to them controlling the narrative.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much more, because but due to the sake of time, I wanted to play an excerpt from your speech at the United Nations Security Council. That was a wonderful speech, by the way.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, put that there. You were talking really, essentially, the bulk of the speech was about necessity to leave this notion that we have to continuously keep supporting military operations in Ukraine. But then towards the end, you actually talked about the other aspect of what's going on in Gaza, and how we really need to also leave that as well, because ultimately it's about not, using our tax dollars and resources to uplift a regime like that of the Zionist regime over there in Israel, or occupied Palestine. And so I just want to thank you for that, because I think that was absolutely necessary for the world to really hear, because a lot of times, people, I like to tell people who are from the outside of the empire, who are looking at us, and I goes like, look, it is not us. We didn't even vote these people in, or if we did, okay, we did, as we voted them in. But, I mean, really, they're just puppets of the corporations. It's not actually us. You know what I'm saying? It kind of feels like that.
But that's get back to like what you're doing here, right? And what others across the internet are doing in terms of this ability to communicate. That allows us to have the solidarity around the world, right? So, having an understanding that communication, that ability to interact with, I mean, this is something that, sure, people have always been in solidarity with others. I mean, look, you just talked about the 85 students at Columbia in solidarity with those in South Africa, right? But it's different in the ability for us to have this type of face-to-face communication. And again, that terrifies them, because that takes the power away from corporations. They're not just losing control of the narrative, they're losing control of actual interaction. And that's why they're so desperate to do things like ban TikTok, right? I mean, they want everything to go through the American tech giants, who are as much of the empire as Raytheon and Lockheed are, or Goldman Sachs, right? And State Street Bank are. I mean, so, that is something that we have to keep in mind. This is why people need to support the work you're doing, support people like you, because we need to continue to build this, because even though we have these setbacks, I'm going to say this in spite of the genocide that's occurring, because good God, but we are winning. And I think it might be small victories, but I do believe we are progressing to a way where we could be said that we are winning. And again, I say that in spite of everything that's happening in Gaza right now, that the genocide of the Palestinian people. But I mean, the point of my speech at my briefing at the United Nations Security Council was this idea that in Ukraine, we are on an escalatory trajectory that is a risk that no one should accept, because of where that can lead to in terms of a nuclear war. This is something that no one, and this is not hyperbole, this is not exaggeration. This is where, any type of solid objective analysis will lead you to, this is we're on this type of escalatory trajectory, and this is a risk we should not be taking. And then, of course, speaking about what's happening in Gaza, for the Palestinians' sake, of course, to at least say something at that table at the UN Security Council to acknowledge them. It's the least anyone could do, but also too, to put that point of like, you don't think we're capable of destroying ourselves? Look what we are doing right now in Gaza. Look at our own inhumanity. Look at how through both megalomania and greed, we will go along with the clear destruction of a people playing out on our phones and on our television sets every day. Right. And so that type of understanding that what we are up against here, this risk is very real. And it is, incumbent to do something about it before it is too late. I mean, the phrase I used, the speech was basically until, we're, approaching an apocalyptic point of no return.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for that. I'll probably try to play it at the close, but Matthew Hoh, it was so great to have you, because it's just like you got a really huge compliment from Scott Ritter about your speech at the UN Security Council, and Scott Ritter's been on it for a while now. So, I mean, if you get a compliment from Scott Ritter, you got it, bro.
Well, yeah, Scott's a friend of mine, and I'm very lucky to have his friendship, but also even more so to learn from him. And to get a compliment from Scott, that's a pretty big deal for me. But I appreciate you having me back on. Happy to come on whenever. Let's not make it 2 years again. But yeah, thank you for everything you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so very much. And where can everybody find you and what you got coming up soon?
Oh, yeah. So I'm the associate director for the Eisenhower Media Network. We're a collection of former military and intelligence officials who argue for diplomacy and peace. You can just Google Eisenhower Media Network. And then I am on Twitter at Matthew P. Hoh, P as in Patrick.
All right. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you in the next one. See you. All right.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So, look, that was a very important conversation to have. Thank you so very much to Matthew Hoh for joining, talking about the developments over what happened with his campaign in the Green Party in North Carolina, and then giving his thoughts of what's going on across the country in really college campuses all across this country, college and universities. And so, I think it's deeply important, him as a anti-war veteran and peace advocate. I think it's important that we hear from people like him. Of course, I mentioned Scott Ritter. You have many people who are anti-war or anti-imperialist voices who are also veterans. You have Kit from Harlan's Media, who's also a veteran that also speaks out against imperialism and war. You have Afeni, who is on the ground, former RBN member. She is on the ground in Washington, D.C. She is also speaking out against imperialism and war. So it's important to listen to these voices so that we realize that they know what war is. They've seen it firsthand. So it's important to get their perspective. And so I just want to thank Matthew Hoh for being on once again to give me that perspective as well. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and give the stream a like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. I have to hard stop at 3:15, so I want to make sure I get through this. We have some house cleaning things to do, but one of the things I want to do is what I'll do is I'm going to link the speech that Matthew Hoh gave at the United Nations Security Council. So if you guys want to, you guys can have that. Here we go. So you guys have that as well. And then also I'm going to link you guys the article from the Gray Zone as well. The Gray Zone article that came out. I think that's also deeply important. If you guys have not, you guys give that a read. It's not a long article. It's actually a pretty quick read, but it actually talks about that professor who actually assisted in going against essentially students who are protesting genocide. So you guys have that there as well. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the chat. But before I do that, I just want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. See, without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. You guys make this happen. And so I just want to give a huge shout out to all of you, because guess what? Chicken butt. I would not be able to do this work. So you guys literally keep the lights on. So if you guys have not, then you guys can also become patrons on Patreon, or anybody who sends me anything via coffee as well. So let me share this. Hang on. What are you doing? Hey. There we go. All right, here's the list of patrons. So yes, and I need to get this updated. I will get it updated. Well, make it prettier, I should say. That's what I need to do. But for right now, these are the patrons on Patreon that I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to, and the patrons from Coffee as well. And if you guys would like to, you guys can also become patrons on Patreon at patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. And let's share the tiers just in case. So here are the tiers. You have JB members, Solidarity, Comrade, Jaybefaunters, super Jaybefaunters, super duper Jaybefaunters, and mega Jaybefaunters. So thank you so very much. Also, shout out to very new patron. We have Wilsons4. So thank you so very much for becoming a new patron on Patreon. Oh boy. All right. Now, going into the chat, I am going to try. I don't know why I can't get the chat on StreamYard. I'm going to try to look into how I can do that because I know other channels do it. But I'm going to share the screen and give a shout out to Krona Ursa on Rumble. Says, I had something like this on HLM. Police do most of these things. And he says, also, police escalated these things to purposely crack down on. Yes. So thank you so very much to Krona Ursa on Rumble. Now, we're going to go in and I checked the Rockfin chat. I haven't seen anything yet. So thank you very much for anybody who's watching on Rockfin. Let's go to the chat here. I got a few people saying hello. All right, we have Jacqueline coming in saying, hi, JB and everyone. It is a good job. My daughter told me that this was on. Otherwise, I had never known. Oh, great. Despite this subscribing to this channel and pressing all the notifications bell. Are you subscribed to my Substack? So if you go in the description, I have the Substack. All you got to do is sign up for the email notifications. And then about 20 minutes before I go live, or upload clips, then you will get that notification from me each and every time. You don't have to rely on the YouTube algorithm. You get it straight from me. So if you would like to, you can also do that. I highly recommend doing that because, you know, there may be a point where I may end up going live for some breaking news and I'll do it like 20 minutes before and you may not know. So unless you're actually subscribed to the newsletter. So go ahead and subscribe there if you would like to. We have Terry Connolly saying, good afternoon, fam. Good afternoon, Terry Connolly. Good to see you and peace to you too. Mr. Meepsor says, RBN's got it going on. 2 shows airing at once. Yeah, I don't know if it's an actual live stream or a clip that's being premiered right now, but there's a lot of news going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if either Nick or CJ is live right now because there's a lot of news. Robert says, it is great to see James and Matthew got together. Yes. Actually, I've had Matthew on. Man, it's been a while. Back in 2022. So yeah, I you know, it's about time I had him back on again to discuss this. And I don't know why I let it go so long. Yeah, that's on me though. But he's a great guest to have on and has a lot of, you know, wealth of knowledge to share. So I'm gonna have him back on again sooner than what I have. The Quantum Alchemist says, hi, JB in chat. Good to see you, Quantum Alchemist. Nice to have you in here. Retro Gamer is saying, hello. Good to see you. Wesley O'Neill says, great show. Thank you so very much, Wesley. Johnny Davis says, wow, bro, this is deep. And, bro, people tried to figure this stuff out. Other paid the price, and they survived. Thank you so very much for your input. Holistic Radical says, I've been listening here for a while, but I have to leave and hang out with the encampment at JHU before my Qigong class and bar social tonight. Well, I wish you the best, the most success and peace in that endeavor because a lot of the police are coming after students and faculty, and it's not very good. So we have V.S. Adams saying spy versus spy. Yeah, it's kind of crazy what they're doing there. Roger Meadows says indirect initiated state statute, indirect initiated constitutional amendment both mean once qualifying to go on the ballot, it stops at state legislature to adopt or reject. If rejected, it goes on ballot. All right. Roger continues, says citizen-initiated constitutional amendment and citizen-initiated state statute once qualified go on ballot. It bypasses state legislature and goes straight to the ballot. See, Laura says it is hard to see that we are winning when many generations of families are being destroyed. Power to the people and to the students who give us so much hope. I actually have a video I'm gonna close out with that's gonna give you guys hope too. It's beautiful. It may make you shed a tear, but it's going to be very wholesome. It's not anything that's negative. It's wholesome. You guys are gonna love it. But yes, thank you so very much, Laura. Roger says, Jay, I left my margarine in the car overnight. What should I do? Put it in the freezer to let it reconstitute a refrigerator? I don't know. I don't eat margarine. If I'm going to have something like that, I'm going to have butter or olive oil. But I don't do margarine. James don't do margarine. But I'm not sure. If you have a blender, I maybe take it and blend it first so that it re-emulsifies, and then pour it back and then put it in the fridge or the freezer so that it can, congeal faster. That might be the case. But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Hope it works. All right. Chris C says, came in late, but the highlight of Biden's dumb speech is him saying term against the law, especially when we have blatant examples of it being violated. Yes. While we're talking about the law, has anybody checked in on Tara Reid? We're going to talk about people doing stuff illegal, Joe Biden. We're going to talk about people doing illegal stuff, Joe Biden. Are we going to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop issue? Are we going to talk about that? Are we talking about illegal stuff, Joe Biden? What about the police brutality that's happening left and right across this country? The police that you so decided that we needed to fund more. See, it's always, oh, we're for the rule of law, unless it's people like him. Unless it's his son. Unless it's actual people who are protesting genocide. Rules for thee, but not for me. See how it works? And this is why channels like this exist, to show the contrast. And this is by no means an endorsement of anybody like Donald Trump. In fact, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are really two cheeks of the same butt, because they are just like each other. Because rest assured, what's going on right now in the bashing heads of college students that are occupying college campuses across this country, you don't think this would happen under Donald Trump? Oh, yes. See, this is how you know Donald Trump and Joe Biden are cut from the same cloth. Because Donald Trump would be like, yeah, I would have done the same thing. In fact, Donald Trump is basically saying the same thing. DJ says, join late. Going to have to watch the full podcast later. Keep up the amazing work. Oh, RBN and Jay, thank you so very much. All right. Good to see you. Wadi is in the chat. Rondo is also in the chat saying hello to everybody. Good to see you. All right. DJ asks me, do you like Jay, James, or JB? Either way you want. You can call me whatever you want. Just call me for lunch. And then Lou says, we saw it happen in the summer of 2020. Yep, definitely. Roger Meadow says, Dems did an Asian hate crime bill. True. Jewish about to get this bill passed. Japanese got their reparations. Hello, Dems, American Freedmen here. Where's our anti-black hate crime law and reparations? True. I think that we should have that. But, of course, they're not going to do that. Why? Well, what do you think? So thank you so very much. Killia Grigor is in the chat saying hello to everybody. All right. So I have to get going. But just to let you guys know, The reason why I have to rush is because I will be on Lee Camp's channel in 8 minutes. So I have to get going. I gotta go. I gotta change my shirt, and then I gotta get on to Lee Camp. But one of the things that I will be doing over the weekend is I will be doing new reading of my new book, Prejudential by Margaret Kimberly. We're going to be starting on the reading of this. I cannot wait. It's going to be a really fun time. And I'm going to try and see if I can get Margaret Kimberly on. Here's Margaret Kimberly here. See? There she is. Hello, read my book. So yeah, I'm going to get on this book too. So I cannot wait. It's going to be a grand old time. And also, I'm trying to think. Who do I have on next? Oh, yes. Next week, next Tuesday is going to be Ron Placone. So be sure to be there or be square. It's going to be a great time. So you guys are going to enjoy that conversation too. We're going to be talking about a lot of internet stuff and privacy stuff. So it's going to be intense. So yeah. But one of the things I want to share is this beautiful video closing out. Because I think that this is necessary. Did it give me the feels? Yes, it gave me the feels. I am an emotional guy. I don't care. I'm going to say it. But it gave me the good feels because you know what? The students are doing what's right. And they're using their voices to speak out. And I also want to say this about the white students. You're using your privilege in the right way. This is how you use your privilege. Use your privilege to defend the people who are the most marginalized. And keep doing it. Because guess what? You're helping to save this world. So, I just want to say that those of us who have different privileges, use whatever we can whenever we have it. Okay? All right. So, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny or watch something wholesome because joy is revolutionary. I love you all for watching. Mwah! Forehead kisses to every single one of you. I will see you guys in the next one. And deuces, Bruces.
احنا اهل غزة بننبسط كثير لما نشوف طلاب امريكا واقفين معانا وحاسين فينا وجينا نشكركم بطريقتنا البسيطة. بتمنى تستقبلوها بحب. شكرا كولومبيا. شكرا أوروغواي. شكرا سينسكو. شكرا ماليزيا. شكرا ين. شكرا UCLA. شكرا students for justice in Palestine. احنا اهل غزة بننبسط كثير لما
for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.